The early 2000s was still very much a part of the golden era of rom-coms in Hollywood. A lot of those of my generation and the smidge older grew up on Meg Ryan, Drew Barrymore, and Sandra Bullock finding love over and over in this movie or that. As a young teenager, when Miss Congeniality came out, I definitely drank the Kool-Aid. It was a story of boy realizes girl is hot, she kicks butt, and they fall in love. Today, nearing my 40s and having had my share of dating mediocre men, this movie makes me so mad. If you haven't already seen it, the TLDR is that Sandra plays a very rough around the edges, not dainty FBI agent, and she is thrown into a national beauty pageant undercover. I don't have an issue with the plot, and it's definitely funny in some parts, I'll give it that. But the love story, it's vomit inducing watching it now as an adult. If you haven't seen it since you were young, please watch it and tell me if it made you just as mad. It comes down to one thing: Eric Matthews is the smallest man who ever lived. When he is assigned as head of the operation, he holds what's essentially a staff meeting, and he has zero ideas, he and the rest of the men at that table. Gracie Hart feeds them idea after idea, basically mapping out what needs to be done, yet Eric always acknowledges it as his own instructions. She tells them to connect with local law enforcement, and he says, "While I'm at it, let's do that." Of course, the men around him respond with, "Good idea, boss," as if they didn't just hear Gracie tell them what to do. And then when they were trying to pick who the undercover agent will be, he was so incredibly unkind to her. Actually, he's unkind to her throughout the movie, but I don't want to go through each example. Also, this is a good part to note that I am focusing solely on the love story arc, so I'm not going to get too much into the rampant misogyny in this movie today. Maybe tomorrow. So, her picture gets brought up, and he is immediately dismissive, and it takes her being put in a bathing suit to think about it. Because a woman's beauty is only noticeable when she's in a bathing suit, right? To his credit, he goes to her to convince her to take the role rather than just pulling rank willy nilly. But if anything, the little wrestling scene makes the movie that much worse. He downright gropes her. She never consented to be touched like that. And no, I'm not talking about when they're actually wrestling, that one seems like fair game to me. I mean, when he bent over by her derriere and touched her, or the bit where he ran his fingers down the lower part of her stomach while she was restrained. And the one final spank he gives her to end the scene. Again, why is that okay? Let's not even get into the fact that this was in public. We talked about him being unkind. Not only does he make many disparaging comments about her body, but also takes a lot of pleasure in making her jealous that he can eat whatever he wants, but she was only given a stick of celery or a carrot. Very deliberately biting into a candy bar in front of her face while she's starving at a moment when things were potentially turning romantic for them ever so slightly. And when it was crunch time and he had the opportunity to stand up for her to their captain, not only does he say there was no reason to stay and further investigate, but as she was getting her behind handed to her, he just stood there. Actually, he told her to shut up, but other than that, he just stood there. The girl who was carrying his operation on her back literally, and was the only reason they even knew what to do to begin with, and he just lets her get run over by a bus. And at the end of the movie, they kiss and she's in love with him. What gets me is that when I watched this as a young girl, I would go, "Aw," when the big kiss happens at the end. Today, I see it clearly. He is a mediocre man who coasts and gets things handed to him, and he never treated her well. Gracie was smart, beautiful, resourceful, and many other things, and for some reason, she falls for the mean, misogynistic, mediocre man. This will probably have to be another video, but this movie is a prime example of the Kool-Aid that we were fed in the early 2000s that make us, most of us anyway, romanticize toxic relationships. What was your favorite rom-com from the early 2000s? Does it hold up? Tell me in the comments, and please subscribe for more content.